What's up, everybody? Welcome to this Elmonters Islanders overtime as they fall 6-5 to the New York Rangers here at MetLife Stadium, excuse me. It's another one of those games for the New York Islanders. I think it's their 13th third period blown lead of the season. It's getting to the point where the Islanders can't afford that. They can't afford that, quite frankly, ever. And now looking at the standings, this is a game that the Islanders were in control of. Yes, they go down 1-0 early in this one. They battle back, score 3 goals quick, 2 goals in 16 seconds. It was just the Islanders were putting their foot on the gas, scoring up 3-1. Then it becomes 4-1, then 4-2, and then just an utter collapse. Penalties. Scott Maple takes 3 penalties in this game. It's an unacceptable thing for him, whether you think the penalties were justified or not. He's the one in the box that goes there 3 times. The PK can't come up clutch. And then the dying seconds, it's just, again, it's the Islanders failing to execute late, where maybe their mental capacity right now is that we're still going to blow leads late in thirds. The Islanders haven't had that many leads under Patrick Waugh yet, and Patrick Waugh's had this mentality, and this was the storyline if the Islanders had held on. This is what I was going to ask the players. Patrick Waugh spoke so much about how one bad shift doesn't mean one bad period, doesn't mean one bad game. The Islanders got caught on that first goal. And then, okay, they had a choice. Head down and fall apart and lose this one outright, or battle back. And you know what they did? They said, we're going to come out stronger. We got this. And they score those 3 goals. And Rangers push like you expect them to. And they come back and things like that. But the Islanders kept their head high, kept going, and then just penalties, pulling the goalie, things like that. And then in overtime, Noah Dobson has a fantastic game, 3 assists, and he just makes a mistake in overtime. He tries to sauce a puck up the middle, gets picked off out of midair by Artemi Panarin, who scores. Dobson knocks the net off. People are wondering, how does this count? The net was coming off. The rule is if it's going in, if they're going into a goal, and that's where the goal would have been, and the defenseman's the one knocking the net off, the goal counts. It didn't, it wasn't like the Islanders, Dobson knocking the net off made it an easier goal for Panarin there. So that's why it does count. It does get reviewed. And the Islanders, again, up twice in this game, up in the third period. They lose, and I just want to get to as many questions, comments, concerns as possible. If you're joining us on the Elmonters YouTube, appreciate that. You can comment from Twitter, from anywhere, and I can read them on this little show here. So if you have questions or comments, we're going to get to a Twitter space. I'm also doing it at the same time. That way we have as much conversations as possible. But we'll start things off here with Pascal Agati Jr. Pascal, just mute your mic for me. Pascal, just mute your mic for me. All right, we'll try to get Pascal back. We're gonna go to this. We're gonna go here. CNJ Isles Mets fans say they're predictable as watching the sun comes up. And again, under Lane Lambert, that was the case. 12 blown third period leads for the Islanders under Lane Lambert. This is a team that didn't blow leads. It just didn't happen. And you saw it a lot. And then you said under Waugh, okay, the energy, that's going to be a reason why the Islanders are able to stay in games, because their commitment to competing. And that was a thing they worked on so much this week. 6 straight days on the ice of practice. Today was their 7th, but they worked so much on just the fundamentals. And again, tonight, the fundamentals at 5-on-5 were pretty good. The penalty kill still remains a trouble. Taking penalties is still an issue. And then in Dobson, that's just fundamentals. Waugh said after the game, I'd like my defense not to throw the puck up the middle of the ice, rather than skate the puck out, which is what Waugh's been talking about. Active D, getting the puck up, skating. He wants that. He said that's the hardest habit to break for this Islanders team, who hadn't had a new voice since 2018. Again, it's just those are the mistakes that cost you games. And now the Islanders do get a point. It's a valuable point for sure. But again, you look at just the way this game unfolded, and a game the Islanders kind of had to have. You look at the Rangers and you look at the story, okay, they come back and win, but that wasn't the story because of where the Rangers are in the standings. The story was the Islanders blowing this thing. So I think you just look at this game as a whole, and Waugh said it after the game. He liked the way the team played 5-on-5. You had to. Again, you expect the Rangers to push. They're a very good team anyway, and the Islanders were giving it some good, and they're not a team that's going to fall apart. They stood tall, but again, fundamentals. Now, do the Islanders win in overtime? Should that game have ever gone to overtime? Obviously not. But they do leave a point on the table here. We're going to move on back to the Twitter space here. We're going to go to Danielle. Danielle is connecting here. Give it a couple seconds. Hey, Danielle, how are you?
Can you hear me?
Yep, you're good. How are you?
Good. Just wanted to ask about the penalty kill.
Yep.
Like, I know in the past,
Sorry, Danielle, you're cutting out. Can you just try that again? All right, sorry, Danielle. If you want to go again, we'll try to get you back on. We're going to go here to Brian Yeager. Go for it, Brian. Just send me your mic. There you go. How are you?
Hey, just a quick question. I feel like this game shows that it wasn't the coach and it was more the players. Do you agree?
I mean, yeah, again, this game comes down to PK. Now you could blame the players if you really want to, right? You could blame them in how everything went. You could look at the coaching staff and look at the penalty kill and Doug Huda, and Benoit just got here. So I don't think he's going to really change too much off the bat. He's got to see what's working. But yeah, at the end of the day, you blame the players because this is a penalty kill that was never this bad. It wasn't amazing, but a couple of years ago it was. But you look at the way they're playing, and it's not even, you look at the structure. A couple of times it got out of sorts. The Rangers moved the puck well, but there's other times where the players are in the right spots. The players just aren't getting it done. Now, that being said, it's like what we saw last year with Noah Dobson on the power play and how much the power play struggled. Yes, Matthew Barzal wasn't there, but John McLean never changed the power play. He kept running the same players out there. And honestly, listening to Lindy Ruff last night talking with Devils and Flyers, how much the Devils power play has struggled with Luke Hughes as quarterback. And he kept saying during the presser, like, not many teams have a rookie quarterback in a power play, want him to work through it. But the Islanders are in a situation like the Devils where they just need a player to work through it. This is a PK unit as a whole. Do you start switching players off it? You're kind of getting to the point you have to, because every power play goal the Islanders allow could be the difference between a win and a loss. And you look tonight, again, this is a really strong 5-on-5 game. And I think under Watt, you have to be happy with what you've seen at 5-on-5. That being said, when a lot of the game isn't being played on 5-on-5, and that's where you're losing the battles, that's a recipe to failure. And the Islanders, again, they could talk all they want about how they feel better under Watt, and Watt could say all the right things, but it comes down to executing in all, shorthanded power play, 5-on-5. Tonight, the Islanders power play was good. 5-on-5, the Islanders were good. Just the PK. But again, you could blame the PK, but you could blame the amount of times the PK has to be out there, right? We talk about players getting tired. The amount of time that a lot of these guys are playing here, not only does being on the PK hurt it, even if they kill it off. Matthew Barzal's out there on the PK, right? Your top player under Patrick Roy, since Patrick Roy's gone here, is getting his ice time cut because Islanders aren't staying out of the box. Now, you could argue, so a lot of people arguing, well, it's the ref's fault they lost tonight. Again, calls are going to happen. I'm not here to debate whether they were the right or the wrong calls. It's the calls. And good teams overcome bad calls. And that's what the Islanders are not doing. It's been the Islanders have talked a lot about the bad calls this year a lot, but we've heard that since October, November. It doesn't matter. You have a job to do. When you take a penalty, you kill it off. The good teams kill off the penalties. It's not always, we know that refs are going to make mistakes all the time. They're not perfect. They're doing what they can, but they're not perfect. They're going to make mistakes. But if the Islanders continue to struggle on the PK and just struggle to, again, it's not like these were, oh my God, horrific calls. Like, there were sticks in the areas, things like that. It wasn't just, what are they calling, right? So the Islanders have to figure that out, because they have no shot at making the playoffs if their penalty kill is going to continue to struggle like that. And also, if they're just not going to be disciplined enough. Up next, we have Hayden. How do you think Roy responds to Mayfield's play? It's been a tough year for Scott Mayfield. It starts just game one of the season, blocking a Rasmus Dahlin shot off the ankle, misses 7 games, comes back, hurts his finger, gets a lot of time off. You're expecting him to be better, and he had looked better. A couple of games ago, I thought was Mayfield's best game. And now the question is, what are we going to do with Mayfield, right? I would be shocked, absolutely shocked, if Scott Mayfield's sitting on Tuesday. I doubt it. That being said, the Islanders have an issue because they signed this guy to 7 years. And early results, or that's a bad contract, right? He's not going to be able to hold up, and he's not holding up this year. Now, is he completely healthy? Who knows? But at the end of the day, it's mental mistakes. Those penalties, sure, physical in terms of not being able to get body position, losing guys, getting caught flat-footed. But this is what Scott Mayfield, he's a big body defender, right side defender who kills penalties, blocks shots, things like that. Every team needs a guy like Mayfield. That being said, the mistakes that he's making right now are costing the Islanders. Again, Islanders still have to kill these penalties off. They don't. So there's a failure on multiple levels. But taking 3 penalties in a game, and some teams, that gets you a benching. The question is, does Sebastian Aho go in for Scott Mayfield, make this team better? Does moving a guy to his right side and putting in Samuel Bolduc make this team better? Just calling up a guy from Bridgeport make this team better? I don't know. Again, they could go that route, but I would doubt it. Again, you look at everything that's happened today. Penalty kill failed. Scott Mayfield didn't help the cause. I just would be really, really shocked if Mayfield wasn't playing. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that's what I think will happen on Tuesday. Going back to the Twitter space here, we're going to go to Trevnev. Trevin, just leave me your mic for me. Nope. All right, we're going to move on here to, we're going to try Pascal again. Go for it, Pascal. Just leave me your mic for me.
Yep, Steph, can you hear me?
Yep, you're good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm a big fan of your work.
Appreciate it.
Just two things. When Watt took over, he talked about, being able to help his team, close out leads and quote unquote run the ball to run out the clock like in football, And I think you touched upon it, but I think, when it's 5-3 early in the third, why do you think they couldn't do that? They just seem to take bad penalties. And I'm not a guy who likes to blame the refs, and I have some friends who are thinking the refs screwed us today, but I don't believe that to be the case.
Yeah.
And just quickly, secondly, I believe, after the game, Waz said, I'm happy with our game or something to that effect. I feel like I just want to see him say, this is unacceptable. They played well for the majority of the game, but they lost. I want to see him get angry. I don't know. Maybe it's not a style, but I hope he's holding these players accountable behind closed doors.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
Yeah, to your first point, why the Islanders couldn't just run up the score on them and keep going is, well, the Rangers pressed. We knew I think the Islanders knew the Rangers were going to come out strong. Then they get into penalty trouble, and then they get tired. And that's the issue. If the Islanders stay out of the box in this game, they win this game. Do the Rangers still push? 1,000%. But the Islanders are able to run 4 lines, continue to go on the attack. Wass said the first day he was here that the Islanders are going to go for the kill when having the lead. But you can't do that if you're shorthanded. You can't do that if you're being pressured every second to dump the puck deep and go for a change. I mean, these guys, clearly look like these guys were getting tired out there. And again, the penalty kill does that. That's a killer. Again, it kills it. But even if the penalty kill is successful, which they got a big kill early in that period, if I'm remembering correctly, but that takes so much out of those guys who then have to go play 5-on-5. And again, like I said before, the reason the Islanders can't go on the attack is when they're on the penalty kill. Like, sure, you could dump and chase and kill it or go for the shorthanded the mark. But again, Matthew Barzal is not on the ice. Some top players are not on the ice on the penalty kill, and that's limiting their minutes. As for Patrick Waugh, after the game, he said we played well, and he talked about 5-on-5 play. And again, I agree. But at the end of the day, again, it's not a situation where that's good enough, right? I mean, for Patrick Waugh, he's at the point, he took on this team. He knows where they're at. He knows that it's playoff hockey from here on out. But we're at the point where, the players have to get it done. Waugh's system is there. Not everyone here can play Waugh's system. And I wouldn't be shocked come the end of the year, come the deadline, Waugh's looking at players that he thinks could be on this team next year. Waugh's looking at players that he thinks could move on. And Waugh's looking at players that he thinks the Islanders should bring in. I mean, I feel like that's what every new coach would do, given the system they want to play. It's different than when Trotz came here. And I've said this a couple of times. When Trotz came here, he looked at the roster and said, the only way we're going to win is by playing defense. We don't have enough of the offensive flair to be an offensive team. It wasn't a defensive-minded, ridiculous defense shutdown coach at Washington. I mean, he had Alex Ovechkin. They had an offense. He looked at this group and said, this is what we have to do because this is our talent level. Waugh's in a completely different boat because Waugh's coming in with his system. And you could say it's defensive, but it's really not. It's defensive structure to make offense, create offense off the rush, those things. It's a very aggressive system. And he's coming in and saying, this is what we're playing. He's not looking at the Islanders' skill and saying, this is what fits. No. He came in with this system. You either learn how to play it or you don't. And again, the Islanders are running out of time where it's just, we played good, but we lost, right? These have to be, we played well and we won, and we played bad and we won. The Islanders don't have time. Good teams win, but also good teams find ways to not lose. And right now the Islanders are struggling. The Islanders are doing everything possible to lose games where they deserve to win. You look at today. I mean, they deserve to win this game and they blew it away. They shot themselves in the foot, and unfortunately for the Islanders, now they have a huge, every game, like Brock Nelson said, every game now going forward is a must-win game. Rick Valaro says, why Wahlstrom over Gauthier? So Gauthier was sent down, and the Islanders said it was a cap situation move, but that Lou wanted to give Wahlstrom a good look, and Wah said the same thing. Gauthier goes down to Bridgeport and gets hurt in his second game, I believe. He scores a goal, gets hurt, misses a couple of days of work. So he didn't get recalled probably because of the injury. He came back Friday, but I think the situation right now, they want to give Wahlstrom a look, whether it's to show him off. I don't know how much value he has now, probably not a lot, but show him off. Let him earn that confidence where he's not pressured into thinking someone's taking his job every second. But number two, Gauthier's, again, I thought Gauthier's IQ was higher than people said it was coming into camp. He was making really smart reads in the neutral zone. But early on in the Waugh tenure, at the end of Lane's tenure here, he was making passes that you just can't make, making plays that you just can't make. And I think Wah probably said this is not kind of guy I think can play my system. That's not to say there's other guys here that don't make those mistakes, and maybe Gauthier deserves to be in this lineup. But right now, Gauthier going down was to give Wahlstrom a good look, and that's what Lou said. All right, we're going to go back to the request here. We're going to go to Puck and Ponies.
Hi, Steph.
Hey, how are you?
Finally speaking to you, and I love the work you do, and
Appreciate it.
I guess these two things are leading into each other. One lead is going to lead into the other.
Yep.
It's been a thing for a while, in my opinion, that the Islanders have trouble with teams that have speed and skill and that can really bring it in the third, especially in the third period when the Islanders are holding a lead.
Yeah. And
this is not new to Patrick Waugh. This is not new to Lane Lambert. It really did happen when Trotz was here too. To me, this is an old story.
Mm-hmm.
And so now to tie it up to what you just said, you think there are players here who cannot play Waugh's system? Who are some of them besides Gauthier?
Yeah, I don't, quite frankly, and again, it's early on in the Waugh, but to me, Wahlstrom struggled to play really any system at the NHL level, and one that's based on quick puck moving and speed, which is his system. Again, we haven't seen it to the max, but we've seen it enough at 5-on-5 that Wahlstrom's really struggled to do that. Engvall. I mean, we saw Waugh ripped Engvall during practice the other day in a way that we haven't seen Waugh, not embarrassed, but go after one play like that on the ice, because Engvall was not doing the little things. He was skating by the puck when he missed it, not skid stopping to go back. He wasn't opening up. And Waugh pretty much screamed and said, "Engvall, do you know how to do this?" And Engvall said, "Yeah." And Waugh said, "So effing show me that you can," or something like that. I forgot exactly what he said. But Engvall's a guy that we're detail oriented. It's the system, but it's also players and fundamentals. And guys like Engvall have struggled this year. He's been benched for a couple of reasons, not doing the fundamentals. Gauthier is another player. Wallstrom's another player for me. Scott Mayfield's really struggling. He wants mobile D. He wants active E. What Mayfield can't do. I'm not saying Mayfield doesn't have a role on any team, and he's not an NHL caliber defenseman. He hasn't played well this year, and he also didn't play well tonight. But he wants mobile defensemen that are willing to activate and jump in on the rush. And not every defenseman in this league could do that, especially not the way Dobson can. But even Pelech, where it's just a quick toe drag, creates more time and space to break out. Waugh made it clear that we could have a great neutral zone breakout, but if we don't have a great D zone breakout, it doesn't matter what a neutral zone breakout is. We can have great offense zone structure, but if you can't get to the neutral zone, everything's connected. And everything starts, usually for the Islanders, when it gets dumped and chased, it's starting in the D zone. Brock Nelson had a better game, but he had struggled. I'm not saying Nelson doesn't have a role in this team. I'm just saying under Waugh, Nelson not doing the little things defensively came back to bite them a couple of times. Anders Lee's foot speed. There are a lot of ways you could key in and name players. Now, again, I do think it's important that I'll let you finish. Don't worry about it. That there's players that can learn to do it, but there's some players that at some point in their careers, like a guy like Wahlstrom, you hate to say it at 23 years old, but can Wahlstrom ever play the way that Waugh wants? Early results or no?
You're right. I agree with everything you've said. And I was just going to highlight with Anders Lee, Waugh actually said when he dropped him down to the second line, I needed a guy who was faster than Lee. And Engvall was there for all of
3 or 4 shifts. Yeah, not even. Yeah.
Well, at the end of a prior game and half of the last time he skated with him. Sometimes I just think as good as Waugh's system is, he doesn't have the cards. Lou did not give him enough to make the playoffs this year. And I don't know how the Islanders are going to attack this in the offseason because they just don't have the cap flexibility to do what needs to be done.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the reason Lou had choices. He could have rode the rest of the season out with Lane, either made the playoffs, missed the playoffs, either bought at the deadline, stood pat, and then brought a new coach in after, or he could bring in Patrick Waugh, let Waugh finish out the season with this group, and reevaluate in the offseason. If the Islanders made the playoffs, I think it was important to get Waugh in here now. That way he could establish a system with the guys that, quote unquote, will be here. That way, when it comes to training camp, it's not guys learning a brand new system and having to use the start of next year as a trial period to figure things out. If that was smart when he fired him, maybe people could say it was too late. Definitely could argue that. But it brings him in with enough time that even if the Islanders miss, the players that are going to be here, like Barzal buying in from day one, Horvat buying it, like those are the kinds of players. Dobson, they're playing Wa's system exactly to a T. And it's important that Wa got here at that point. That being said, I don't think it was Lou bringing Wa in here and giving him guys immediately to fix this. It was Wa's going to come in here, bring up the energy, and through that, if the compete's there and the energy's there, then you could evaluate and see, okay, that part of the equation's okay. We got the guys here that could do that. We clearly know that there's players here that can compete, but then there's players that can't play the way Wa wants to play. I don't think it was ever a situation where we're going to bring in Wa and then I'm going to try to find every player to fit Wa. I think it was Lou believes in this group and believed that they just need energy. The talent is there. If you below the surface, the talent's there. I'm not saying talent's to win the cup. This team should be a playoff team. You look at 13th blown third period lead of the day. Okay, so I don't have to look back and see how many of those went to overtime, whatever it is. But how many points have been left on the table where the Islanders just don't blow these third period leads and they do what they've done in years past where they lock it down? The Islanders are neck and neck with the Rangers or even ahead of them in the Metro, right? So talent-wise, this team is good enough to make the playoffs. But they're not coming through. And potential is one thing. You have to execute. We talk about progression with Wa. That's what he talked about a lot his first week is we're progressing. They go 1, 2, and 1. We're progressing. But at some point, progression has to turn to execution or it's useless. It's like potential with prospects. We talk all the time about, well, this guy's got the potential where now he's 24, 25 in year 5 in the NHL. Great. He has that potential. We haven't seen it at an NHL level to the point where that potential doesn't matter.
Right. And execution to me has always been fundamentals.
Yep.
It's passes that have to be on the tape and not either an inch up where the guy is going to muff it or the guy has to kick it up in the skates. And it also has to be the ability to finish.
Yep.
And too many times they just don't.
Yeah. And
there's not enough finishing those sticks.
Yep. And I agree. But then when you have games like tonight where they score 5 goals, you got to win a game if you score 5 goals, especially with Sorokin. Like this team should not be losing games when they score 4 or more goals. And that's the mistake. So you're talking about fundamentals. How many fundamentals are about turning the puck over that leads to penalties? It's not just finishing plays back. Like Dobson's mistake in overtime is just clear fundamental. You never go up the middle. We're taught that in kindergarten, Mike's ice. Like you're taught that immediately. Now, again, Dobson had a fantastic game. That game should never have needed to go to overtime, but he's put in a huge situation. And unfortunately for him, in a game that was a historic for him because of becoming the first defenseman ever to have 3 assists in an outdoor game, getting to the 50 assist mark, becoming him and Dennis Potvin for the only 2 defensemen in Islanders history to ever get to that mark in 54 games or fewer. So it was a great game, but again, fundamentals came back to bite the Islanders tonight. That's really what it was. And I appreciate the chat. I'm just going to move on here. We got a lot more people.
Good talking, Steph.
Good one. Moving on here into Mike.
Hi, Stefen.
Hey, Mike.
It did the thing again where I was listening to your him and Dennis Potvin were the only defensemen to reach the 50 assist mark in this many games. Is that what you said?
And 54 fewer games are the only 2 defensemen to do it in Islanders history. Yep.
Gotcha. Yeah, I cut off that part. I was interested to hear the stat.
Well, there you go.
So, yeah, my question's pretty simple. I mean, I've gone over this with you that, the rest of the season really doesn't matter that much to me. They got to sell no matter what they do. It's just the right thing to do. But I just wanted to know, like I tweeted at you, I know you're busy, but who is in charge of making these penalty kill lines? I mean, why at this point are they still running out the same group of guys when it hasn't worked and the playoffs are pretty much on the line every night?
Yeah. Again, we go back to the same thing we saw last year, right? Their inability to move on from Noah Dobson at the point killed their power play last year. I get it. You want Noah Dobson to develop there, but last year it came to a point where you got to try something different. Maybe run the second unit out there more than the first. It wasn't working. Now this year, things have flipped. Now Doug Huda has been the guy creating the defense lineups. I'm assuming Wa has a say in that stuff. Of course, he oversees everything now. And bringing on Benoit, his assistant from Quebec, he's going to have a voice in the penalty kill as well. I can't tell you exactly which one of those coaches are making the lineup. I'm assuming they're going to keep with what Huda has been doing and hoping that it comes out of that. But you're going to get to a point where you're going to have to take guys off of it. And the bigger issue is guys that kill penalties. Now, I'm not saying Scott Mayfield's the best shutdown defenseman the Islanders have. But when you have penalty killers in the penalty box, it kills you because you're taking players from other areas of the ice that guys are playing now in added roles, in roles they're not as familiar with, which leads to chaos in front of goal, which leads to miscommunications. And then they're put in spots where they're on the ice for a goal against when they shouldn't be on the ice at all. So we saw a case of Zekas last year where he was taking so many penalties, and it's like, yeah, the Islanders penalty kill is doing what it's doing because one of the Islanders' better penalty kills in the box. And this year he hasn't been as crazy in terms of penalties, but he's out there struggling. Pajot's out there struggling. Yeah, I don't know who makes the lines. And to your argument to sell, the Islanders have players that do have value. They do. And we've talked about it a lot. You know, I'm not saying these players are getting traded, just talking about in terms of overall value. Brock Nelson has the most value on this team in terms of players that they're going to sell. Like, I'm not going to throw Noah Dobson's name or map. Like, that's obviously not happening, whether fans want that or not, whatever. Like, Sorokin's not being traded. Sorry to tell you all guys, Sorokin's not going anywhere. But Brock Nelson has the most value. Then I think it's Palmieri. And then it's Pajot, Cizikas in terms of offensive trade value. You know, every playoff team is going to – Cizikas is a perfect playoff player. Kyle Palmieri's done it in the playoffs and has been, I would say, behind Barzal and maybe Horvat there, second or third best player under Patrick Roy. My opinion, we could talk about it, but that's my opinion. I think Kyle Palmieri's been incredible under Patrick Roy more often than not. A playoff team would love him. Pajot is one of those centers that maybe he's not the offensive guy that the Islanders thought he would be. Maybe he hasn't won as many draws as they want, but a guy that kills penalties, quote unquote, kills penalties, wins faceoffs. Every playoff team would love a guy like that. In terms of players on the back end, again, I don't see a Scott Mayfield being traded, but you can't undervalue right side defenseman. I get his contract, but the AAV is low enough where it is movable. The cap's going up exponentially, but big body right-handed defensemen are very hard to come by. Even a guy like Sebastian Aho, who would probably be on the move, could be on the move, is a guy that, you know, just an extra body defenseman. There's value there. It's not incredible value. The Islanders aren't going in, or we're going to trade those guys and get back Connor McDavid. Obviously, that's not the case. But if they're selling and looking for a couple of draft picks, like if Scott Laughton's going for a first round pick, Pajot might get you that. Palmieri would definitely get you a first. Like there's ways for the Islanders to bulk up their assets, whether they want to use those picks or use those players and put that and go and get a guy like a Chicken, which to me, again, I'm thinking long-term here to get another guy to solidify your back end for the next 6, 7, 8+ years, get that final piece. I think Mike Riley's been solid for the Islanders, but there's a reason why he's been up and down NHL, AHL, and hasn't gotten a long-term deal with anyone. There's a reason for that. And he has flaws defensively. I just think adding a final piece, that defense, would be huge for this team. But yeah, there's players the Islanders could sell. You just, like, I don't think Brock Nelson goes anywhere unless Brock Nelson tells the Islanders, hey, I'm not going to sign an extension here when his contract's up.
Yeah, I just wanted to, one final point there, Steph, is that it's just odd to me, like I said, that they keep rolling out those same PK units, especially because there's a really good chance that guys like Martin and Clutterbuck won't be on this team next year. I mean, you know, at some point you have to transition to the new guard, no matter, you know, if you like it or not. These guys are getting really, really old. And that's why I like guys like McLean, and I'm surprised he's not here working on the PK, or even someone like Gauthier, who I think they could have used tonight. It worries me a little bit that we're still using these guys and we might be selling in 2 weeks. Yeah. It's odd to me.
Great point. Yep, great point that we're going to move on to Ariel. Ariel, give me 1 sec. Kyle McLean, I truly believe, will be back up here, whether it's this year or next year. I think, you know, if the Islanders do decide to move a center, I'm hypothetically speaking, let's say they move Pajot, right? McLean could play a third-line shutdown role. Cizikas could play a third-line shutdown role. I think McLean saves you cap-wise from having to – you don't have to pay too much, especially when the Islanders – you know, the Islanders' fourth line was what it was. But you're in a day and age in the NHL where you don't need a shutdown fourth-line grind. Like that teams don't have that. In the playoffs, does that work if they're playing that way? 1,000%. But to me, the regular season and the playoffs are two completely different sports. Regular season is speed and skill. If you could stack your top 6 and bottom 6 with speed and skill, you got to do it. You got to do it. Again, they've done so much. Martin, Cizikas, Clutterbuck have done so much more. Martin and Clutterbuck in terms of just the wingers, the older wingers, doing so much for this organization. But the game's changed. I'm not saying there's not value in what those guys bring. But having a guy like McLean who's on a minimum deal, rather than paying a guy $5 million a year where a guy's going to do pretty much the same thing and probably produce the same and kill penalties, and he's younger and faster, that's part of how teams grow at the NHL level. Getting caught with, again, having a guy like Pajot is great if he's going to do exactly what he's being paid to do. Unfortunately, they offered him, they obviously trade a ton for him to get him from Ottawa, thinking that he would be a 25 goal scorer every year, win over 55% of his draws, and be a number one penalty killer on a third line 5-on-5 shutdown role. He's killed penalties, but it's struggled this year. His face-up percentage isn't as high. He's not scoring goals. So not that he was, you know, they falsely signed him like at that time. That's the player he was. Now that was Ottawa, and they knew that, and they knew he was playing as a number one center on that team or a top 6 center, but he hasn't lived up to his contract. And if you would bring in a guy like Kyle McLean and move Pajot for assets, and McLean could do as good of a job, kind of think they have to go that route if other teams start calling. We're going to move on here to Ariel.
Hey, Stefen.
Hey.
Just reiterating what you just said about Brock. If he wants an extension, they're going to extend him. If he has to come out and basically say, "Oh, I don't want to be here anymore," that's ridiculous. Because it shouldn't be up to the player. If he doesn't have a no trade clause and we can get something for him at this point, he's not part of the future. He's part of the problem. I know Brock. I love Brock. I love him on the team. He's a 30-goal, 35-goal scorer. I love it. But at some point, we have to start to move on from these pieces and not be like, oh, well, it's up to them. Like Zeke and Cal. Oh, it's up to them if they want to retire. No, they're washed. Enough.
Yeah.
Move on.
So what I will say is, I don't know if I misspoke before. That's what I think will happen. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I think that's what will happen. And Brock Nelson has a modified no trade clause of 16 teams. So half the NHL, he could say, I don't want to go to. Now, at some point, Brock Nelson's going to fall off. He's on pace to have a 35-goal season for a third straight year. But at some point, he can't keep this up. Now, is it going to be next year? Is it going to be in 2 years? Is it going to be in 3 years? Who knows? I think right now, the value is never going to be higher for him. Quite frankly, probably last year when he made the All-Star team, might have been able to capitalize there. But again, he has to be – I just don't see the Islanders moving on from Brock. Should they do it? If they could get a couple of, if you're getting a first-round pick for Scott Laughton, you could get Brock Nelson, who's probably definitely production-wise.
He would be the top target right now, other than Gensel.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So should the Islanders definitely take calls on him? For sure. I just don't see them moving him. I think it would be, again, if we just talked about centers, right? I don't think McLean's a number 2 center, but you could go out and get a number 2 center, or you can move Barzal. I know they want to separate Barzal and Horvat, but they have assets and extra centers if they wanted to go that route. Brock Nelson would bring you back a lot. I just don't think the Islanders will go that route. Whether that's right or wrong, I just don't see them going that route with Brock.
What about Pajot? Would you see them possibly moving on from Pajot?
I could see him. I believe he also, let me just check here. Wish I had a great memory. I believe Pajot also has a 16-team modified no trade clause. He has let me see here. We got, 16-team no trade clause. Now, there were rumors earlier to start the year, and we've talked about it a lot, that there was a deal in place, a rumored deal, Pajot Wallstrom to Ottawa for DeBrincat. Now, I heard what Andrew Gross reported at the time. I heard the same exact thing. So clearly the Islanders had a thought of moving Pajot if they were bringing the right player in. I don't think, at the end of the day, I think Ottawa declined that. Clearly he wanted to go to Detroit and go home. That's all how that all worked out. But yeah, I think the Islanders, with just saying with what McLean, if McLean doesn't come up and show what he showed, maybe not. But the fact that McLean came up and I thought he was fantastic. A guy like that, people could say he didn't stand out. He didn't do anything. Those are two different things. He didn't stand out is one thing, but that's usually when you see a young player not stand out, that means they're doing the right things. And that's what the Islanders need from a bottom 6 call up. Same thing where I thought if Maggio got called up at some point, they're just players that put their head down, go north-south, get the puck deep, strong defensively, strong positionally, know how to finish, things like that. Like those are the kind of players the Islanders need to get called up. It's not, last year they called up so many guys that just were not ready for the NHL, and it showed. I thought Durando showed that he was ready in terms of his stick positioning, things like that, but obviously he didn't last, and he gets traded to Devils after development camp and rookie camp and training camp there. But yeah, I think if the Islanders can move Pajot because of what McLean showed, McLean could be a bottom 6 forward in this lineup right now, and I think he plays the exact game that Patrick Waugh's looking for.
And one last thing,
Yep.
and you guys can keep going. Mayfield, is it even possible to move somebody like him?
Oh,
because that's just going to be awful.
Definitely. One, retaining 50% is something they would have to do if they want to move him. But because the cap is going up, the same way you look at Engvall's deal and Mayfield's deal is they are so long because Lou was trying to do his best to get the AAV down. Because I don't think, again, I can't speak for exactly what Lou is thinking, but you look at it and if you keep the AAV down for a winger with speed, forget what he's good at and what he's not. Speed is always an asset. A right high-handed defenseman, big body, penalty killer shot, there will always be value. And with the cap going up exponentially, those contracts are movable. Will it be difficult? Do teams know that, okay, the Islanders are trying to get themselves, get rid of Scott Mayfield? Well, we're going to ask for a lot. We're going to ask for definitely 50% retained, and we're going to ask for a pick. Like that might be how they do it. Now, the question is, do the Islanders have a replacement? That's the thing. Does Aho, we talked about it earlier, does Aho in for Mayfield make this team better? Does moving a left side defenseman to the right and putting Semi Bolduc in make this team better? The Islanders need to go get a defenseman. That might be what you come down to at the deadline. The Islanders might need to go get a defenseman. It might just be that simple. And then you move, whoever you want to move. But I think Mayfield's been an issue this year. Definitely think it makes probably more sense to let him just finish out the year and let Wah evaluate and see what Luke can do maybe at the draft. But yeah, it's going to be tough to move. It's definitely certainly possible. It just would require probably moving. I don't think it would take a first, but moving a pick and retaining 50%. I think that's the only way it even gets to the table in terms of trading Scott Mayfield for another team to want him.
Got it. Thank you, Stefen. Appreciate it.
No problem. Moving on here to Danielle. Hey, Danielle, just unmute your mic for me. Danielle, hopefully you can hear me. Just unmute your mic for me so we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yep, there you go. How are you?
Hi, good. How are you? I just wanted to talk about the penalty kill.
Yep.
Just how does it fall off so quickly like it did? Like, I know in the past couple of years, it's been considered, decent, and it was very good under Trotz.
Yeah.
And virtually it's like the same players this year, minus, a few little things. But, like, how did it completely fall off? Is that, like the system or? Yeah.
I think you look and sorry.
Like brain farts? I don't know. Like, what is going on with that? What do you think?
Yeah. Someone needs to study the downfall of the Islanders fundamentals. Since Barry Trotz left, it's a head scratcher for a team. Again, talk about age and the players getting older, and maybe that's a style that just really kills them. Yeah, I don't really. I mean, structure wise, like they seem to be in the right spots a lot. You're just getting to a point where they're not executing, and why do they not execute and things like that. It's a really good question. I wish I had the answer because you're watching them play, and at times, sure, chaos is going to happen, mistakes are going to be made. There's been a lot of times this year, especially early in the year under Lambert, where players are in the right spot. I always look back to that New Jersey game where the Islanders blew it in the final minute, and then they allowed the go-ahead goal, where the players were all in the right spot. They didn't execute the right play, and I think that's been the biggest issue. It's on the players on the ice. System-wise, these players should know what they're doing. They should know how to execute. It could be age. It could be the mindset of just that grinding style for so many years, just mentally wearing on them. So, yeah, to answer your question, I don't think it's the structure because it's the similar structure. I think it's the personnel just not getting the job done, and which might mean those personnel shouldn't be the personnel anymore. I think that's what it comes down to.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to do a couple more guys and wrap this thing up, probably a couple more minutes here. We're going to go to Allo. There isn't anyone in Bridgeport who has earned a look on defense. Now, you could look at Grant Hutton, who did get called up this year, ended up going back down. You get Robin Salo. Now, again, before when training camp happened, Lou said that Salo had NHL potential, but when everyone was getting hurt on the back end, he never got a call. So I'm scratching him off as an option. Clearly, there's a reason he's not being called up. Grant Hutton, solid. He's just solid at his NHL experience during COVID. He was solid playing a couple of games this year, but again, the Islanders clearly don't value that there's guys down there that can make a difference now, or those guys would have been up when there were injuries. Instead, Lou went and got Bortuzzo when Pulak was on LTR. He gets Mike Riley. There were reasons he did that. He could have saved cap space by not doing that. He could have called up players who are on minimum deals. He chose not to. So to answer your question, I believe the organization doesn't feel that any of the defenders down there could help make this team better. We'll do one more here. Found one. We'll do one more here. This is great. We'll do one more after this one. I'll just right here with this. KIH Hockey 39. Is it possible to forfeit the rest of the games? Well, you're going to get pissed off when I tell you that the Islanders right now are, they are, quick math. Right now, they are 5 points out of a wild card spot with a game in hand on Detroit and 3 games in hand on Tampa. So for as bad as this loss is, for the last 3 losses, how bad they've been, for just in general how this season has gone, it is insane that the Islanders can still make the playoffs. Now, they're not going to make it by doing what they did today. They're not going to make it by having a lack of compete like we saw against Seattle and Calgary. But they have a chance of making the playoffs. It is, I'm not going to say it's likely because, again, the Islanders have to, games in hand only matter so much because you have to win those games, right? So it'll be interesting to see what happens to the deadline, what the Islanders do on this trip here, 2-game road trip here before coming home to face Tampa on Saturday night. But 2 wins, 4 points, 2 losses for Detroit, a loss for Tampa, and the Islanders are right there. And who knows? Do the Flyers eventually? We've been saying it every second of every day. The Flyers are going to fall off. The Flyers are going to fall off. They said, no, we're not going to. But at some point, could the Islanders fall? Could the Flyers fall off? Are they going to sell at the deadline? Are they have pieces to sell besides Walker? I mean, who knows? So I think it's funny because I just think the Islanders, you could say all you want how the Islanders have been playing terrible and things like that. So yeah, I just think the Islanders can make the playoffs. It is more than possible for them to make the playoffs. And I think they have a chance, but not by playing like this. All right, we're going to wrap things up here with Doug, and we're going to call it a day. If I didn't get to your, it's going to mute me. Hold on. Go for it, Doug. Doug, just mute your mic for me.
Hold on. All right, you got it?
Yep, you're good. Yep.
All right. I tell you, I've been an Islander fan for 15 years. This game killed me.
Yep.
I'm telling you. I just about had it with them. You know, I live in Jersey, just maybe should be a Devils fan. You know, I just can't believe this team. Every game, they lose that penalty killing. It's awful. You know, it seems like Cizikas gets a free ride on it. He's one of the problems. Him, Pajot, Clutterbuck.
Yeah.
They're all bad. They're bad. They should be gone.
Yeah.
They should be gone.
Yep. No, I get the frustration. And that's the point for these spaces here. And to the point that you're making is they should be gone is like they're probably not going to be gone. And that's the issue when you lock people up. Excuse me, I'm just trying to, it's a little loud here. I'm just going to mute that there. That's just what happens when you lock players up. The Islanders don't have the cap space to really change a lot of what they want to do. They have to find a way to be creative if they want to do that and improve their team. But right now you're at the point where it's just, this is the group right now. Are there players that will not be on the roster next year? I guarantee it. Whether it's trade, whether it's retirements, whether it's moving on, for sure. But the players that are going to be or have to be better. You're not trading the whole team. You're not firing the coach. There's guys here that are not playing to the best of their ability that certainly can. A guy like Cizikas, a guy like Pajot. It's not that they forgot how to play in the penalty kill. It's just mistakes. And when mistakes pile up like they've piled up this year, especially for the shorthanded unit, it's killing them. Now, again, it's also, we talked about it before, is sure, penalty kill struggle, but stop putting the penalty kill in spots where they have to be perfect every night. And that's what the Islanders had to do. It's like Sorokin most nights. You know, he's allowing, he's facing 40-something shots a night, and one of those goals he's going to allow are probably going to be soft. That's just what happens when you allow so many shots on goal. The goalie's just, you can't be perfect. And you're going to allow a few goals that you want back. The same thing with the penalty kill. Penalty kill looked a little better the last couple of games. The last game, they have that kill in overtime. You're thinking, wow, it's incredible. The penalty kill, I think they had they were 2 for 2 on the kill in that game. You like the structure, you like the way they played. And even the kill before the goal late in the third period, that Pelech with 2 huge blocks, even the 6-on-5 short, like they were playing well. And it's just that final play. I mean, Clutterbuck trying to get the puck out of the zone. I mean, that's a fantastic play. Forgot who it was at the point to knock that puck out. That might be the Islanders' first empty net goal of the year. If that gets through. And that's unfortunate. And sure, does Clutterbuck want to flip it out instead? I mean, that's a great play. You got to give credit there. But yeah, the penalty has to be better if the Islanders want to win games, close games out. You need the penalty kill to come up in big moments. The Islanders had a strong PK to start that period where Sorokin, a huge save on Zibanejad one-timer. They just kept saying here to the Rangers, here, get another chance. Here's another penalty. Here, keep going. And to the point when you knew at some point the PK was going to falter. It was just going to falter. And now they had faltered earlier in the game, but you're putting the PK in situations that they shouldn't have to be in every single game where it's, all right, we're taking 3 penalties in the third period. We only have a couple of goal leads here. You guys have to be perfect or we're going to end up tying or blowing it. So I think with that, guys, we're going to wrap this thing up. It has been a great chat. For those that have tuned in on the Elmonters YouTube page, we launched that today. Stan Fisher and I, alongside Islanders past and present, NHL players past and present. We're going to bring a lot of content your way. We're really proud of launching that today. Wanted to launch it on the Stadium Series. Also, if you missed it, Islanders are hosting and UBS Arena are hosting the 2026 NHL All-Star Game. That's a pretty big thing for the organization. They get the outdoor game. You're seeing over on social media, the Matthew Barzal being shared all the time. The NHL is really, I think, joined in on what the Islanders are all about. Now, again, they got to play better. Hosting a thing in 2 years means nothing if the Islanders are terrible. But it's about today. It's about what they do tomorrow. It's what they do in their next game. It's what they do for the rest of the season. Deadline coming up on March 8th. That's the next biggest event for the Islanders before, obviously they're back in action on Tuesday. So with that, we're going to wrap things up here. Islanders blow a couple of big leads to the New York Rangers. First meeting of the year, 6-5 overtime loss at MetLife Stadium just for this Stadium Series event. Stefen Rosnier from the latest from the Hockey News, Islanders side of things, and proud to say the Elmonters. We'll talk to you guys later.